The mysterious arrival. Captain Tessa stood at the observation deck, staring out into the endless black void of space. It was a quiet day, just like any other on the human repair station, Endeavour. The station floated in the vast emptiness, far from any major galactic hub, a place most ships only visited when they had no other choice. The station was known for its ability to repair almost any kind of spacecraft, thanks to the ingenuity of human engineers. Yet, Tessa had never thought that something unusual would happen today. Suddenly, the calmness of space was broken. A strange signal crackled through the station's communication system. It was a distress call, a signal from a fleet of ships approaching fast, but it wasn't like any distress call they'd received before. The transmission was filled with static, and the alien language was unlike anything the human engineers had studied. It was clear, however, that the ships were in trouble. "Captain, you need to see this," Lieutenant Derek said, stepping up beside her. He looked worried, his face pale under the dim lights of the control room. "There's something strange about these ships." Tessa felt a chill run down her spine. She could tell from his tone that something wasn't right. The signal continued to buzz through the speakers, and as it did, the image of several ships appeared on the monitor. The fleet wasn't just one or two ships. It was a massive armada. But the ships looked damaged. Very damaged. Their outer hulls were scarred, some of them smoking from holes in their plating. It looked like they had been through a brutal battle. Despite their advanced design, the alien vessels appeared as if they might fall apart any second. "Are they hostile?" Tessa asked, turning to Derek. "No, ma'am," he replied quickly, his eyes glued to the screen. "It doesn't look like they've come to attack. They're requesting repairs. They're asking for help." "Why us?" Tessa whispered under her breath. The station had only recently become known for its repairs, but it wasn't a military base. They only fixed civilian ships and sometimes cargo vessels in distress. The idea of an entire alien fleet coming to them seemed unbelievable. "Captain," Derek continued, his voice shaky, "the signal is coming from an unknown fleet. They've never been identified before, and we've never seen ships like these in our sector." Tessa's mind raced. An alien fleet, clearly in distress, arriving at their station. This was no ordinary day. She had trained for this, prepared for emergencies, but nothing could have prepared her for what was about to happen. She had heard rumors, whispers in the galactic corners about alien races that had once ruled the stars. Some were said to be peaceful, others far more dangerous. But now, they were here, and they needed something humans could offer. The fleet wasn't just heading for the station, they were heading straight for them. Tessa's heart skipped a beat. These ships were coming at incredible speed, making a direct course for the Endeavour. As they grew closer, the size of the fleet became apparent. It wasn't just a few ships. They were massive, each one larger than any human-made spacecraft she had ever seen. The sleek designs, sharp edges, and glowing lights on their hulls gave off an air of otherworldly sophistication. These weren't ships from any empire humanity had ever known. They were something entirely new. A deep, unsettling silence filled the room. The rest of the crew gathered around the monitors, unsure of what to make of the situation. Tessa's thoughts raced, trying to process everything. Why would such an advanced fleet, with technology far beyond anything humanity had, need their help? There was no simple answer. But one thing was clear: the station would have to act fast. "All crew members to their stations," Tessa ordered, trying to steady her nerves. "Prepare the repair bays for incoming ships. We don't know what we're dealing with yet, but we have to be ready." Her voice was firm, but the uncertainty in her chest was growing. As the alien fleet drew closer, their presence was overwhelming. The lights of their ships flickered in the distance, and for a moment, it felt like the stars themselves were fading in comparison to the brilliance of their vessels. Tessa couldn't help but wonder what kind of power these aliens held. The station's crew moved quickly. Repair drones were deployed, ready to assist with whatever repairs the fleet might need. Tessa knew that her team was capable, but this was different. This was an alien fleet desperate for help, and they were depending on humans to fix them. "Captain," Derek said again, his voice tense, "the lead ship is hailing us." "Put it through," Tessa replied, her hands gripping the sides of the console. A figure appeared on the screen. It was an alien, but unlike any Tessa had ever seen before. The creature's skin was smooth and metallic, with glowing patterns that seemed to pulse with energy. Its eyes were large, black, and without pupils, staring at the camera with an intensity that was almost unsettling. The alien spoke in a low, gravelly voice, its language alien, but Tessa could understand it clearly through the translator. "We are the Threxian fleet," the alien said, "and we need your help. Our ships are damaged beyond repair, and only your species possesses the knowledge to save us." Tessa's heart raced. "We're the ones who can fix them." She could hardly believe it, but the alien's words left no room for doubt. Whatever was happening here, humanity was at the center of it. They had become the galaxy's only hope. "Prepare your station," the alien continued, "or we will perish." The line went silent. Tessa stood frozen for a moment, trying to comprehend what had just happened. The alien fleet, with all its advanced technology, was asking for help from humanity. This was a moment she would never forget. It was a test, a challenge, and perhaps the greatest opportunity humanity had ever faced. But it was also the beginning of something much larger. The real question was, why had these alien fleets come to them? And what had caused their ships to break down so badly? The answers were waiting, but Tessa knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. The hidden truth. The Endeavor's repair bays hummed with activity as the first of the alien ships docked. The crew worked feverishly to prepare everything, unsure of what exactly needed repair, but ready for anything. The alien fleet had arrived, and now they were here, within arm's reach. It was unlike anything Captain Tessa had ever experienced. As the alien ships settled into the docking bays, their glowing surfaces reflected off the polished walls of the human station. The first alien ship was a sight to behold. Massive, sleek, and clearly of a design that was far ahead of anything humanity could even imagine. Yet, as the crew approached, a closer look revealed something troubling. The ship was torn apart, its hull cracked open in several places, revealing inner machinery that had been heavily damaged. The once glowing engines sputtered with weakness, their energy signatures fading. Tessa walked alongside the lead engineer, a quiet but sharp woman named Janice, as they observed the repairs. They were examining the ship's systems, trying to understand what could have caused such significant damage to a vessel of this advanced nature. "This isn't right, Captain," Janice muttered, inspecting the ship's interior. "These ships are built like tanks, but it's as if someone's gone at them with the intent to destroy, not just disable. Whoever did this, they knew exactly what they were doing." Tessa frowned. "What do you mean, knew exactly what they were doing?" Janice glanced at her. "I've worked on alien ships before, Captain. These systems, they're so advanced, but this damage. It looks like someone intentionally targeted their weak spots, specifically their engines and power cores. This wasn't a random attack. Whoever did this wanted these ships to be crippled." Tessa's mind raced. The idea that someone could cripple an entire fleet of such advanced aliens made her uneasy. These were the Threxians, a race that, according to legend, were nearly invincible, advanced far beyond anything humanity could comprehend. Why would anyone want to destroy them, or even cripple them so severely? And why had the Threxian fleet come to them for help? "Janice," Tessa said, her voice low and serious, "do we know who did this to them?" Janice shook her head. "Not yet. We're still looking at the damage. But based on what I've seen so far, it's not just about repairing these ships. We might need to dig deeper. Something doesn't add up." Tessa nodded. The repair work was crucial, but now there was something else she needed to consider. The mystery of the attack on the Threxians. It didn't make sense. No one knew why they had come to humanity for help, and no one knew who their enemies were. But Tessa had a sinking feeling in her stomach that something bigger was at play, something that would shake the very foundation of what they knew. The fleet leader, the alien with metallic skin and glowing eyes, had been watching from the observation deck. As Tessa and Janice continued their repairs, the alien approached them. "You've made progress," the alien said in a voice that was both deep and reverberating. "But we still need more help. The damage goes deeper than just the outer hulls. Our power systems are unstable, and our engines are failing. If you do not complete the repairs soon, we will be trapped here, vulnerable to further attacks." Tessa looked at the alien carefully. It seemed like the fleet leader was hiding something. There was a hint of urgency in their voice, but it didn't seem to be just about the repairs. The more Tessa observed, the more she noticed the subtle tension in the alien's posture, the way their eyes darted around as if they were afraid of something or someone. "Can you tell me more about the enemy?" Tessa asked. Her voice steadied despite the rising anxiety she felt. "Who did this to your fleet?" The alien's eyes narrowed, and for a moment there was a strange silence between them. It was almost as if the question had made them uncomfortable. Then, in a voice that barely above a whisper, the alien spoke. We cannot speak of them. Not yet. There are others who know the truth, but we are not ready to reveal everything." Tessa felt a shiver run down her spine. The Threxians, the seemingly invincible race, were afraid of something, or someone. Whoever or whatever had attacked them was clearly a formidable force. The alien leader was hiding something, and Tessa knew she needed to uncover the truth. "We've seen the damage to your fleet," Tessa said, her tone firm. "If there's something you're not telling us, we need to know. We can't fix this unless we understand what we're dealing with." For a moment, the alien looked down, its eyes glowing softly in the dim light of the station. It seemed to be struggling with something inside, as if it knew that revealing the truth could risk everything. "We have no choice but to trust you," the alien finally said, its voice filled with reluctant sincerity. "You must understand, the enemy we face is not like any other. They have technology beyond even our own. We have been at war for centuries, and we have always managed to survive. But now we are losing." Tessa's heart skipped a beat. "Who are these enemies?" The alien didn't answer immediately, and Tessa realized they were still holding back information. But she wasn't going to let them off the hook so easily. If humanity was going to help them, they needed to know everything, because something about this entire situation felt wrong. The alien leader hesitated again before speaking in a whisper. "They are the Valkyrie, a race that believes in domination above all. They are relentless, cunning, and will stop at nothing to conquer what they consider their rightful territory. We are not the only ones they've attacked." The weight of those words hit Tessa like a hammer. The Valkyrie, a race that lived for conquest, a race that could tear through the galaxy like a storm. And now, they were closing in on the Threxians, and possibly on humanity too. The mystery deepened. The repairs were just a small part of something far greater, and Tessa was about to be thrust into a galaxy-wide war that she could never have imagined. The ingenious plan. The Endeavor's corridors were buzzing with energy as repairs continued. Engineers worked day and night, scrambling to fix the alien ships. Yet despite their expertise, Tessa couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the edge of something bigger, something much more dangerous. As the Endeavor's crew worked tirelessly, Tessa's thoughts kept returning to the conversation with the Threxian leader. The Valkyrie were closing in, and the fleet's survival was hanging by a thread. In the command room, Tessa stood in front of a holographic display showing the damage reports from the alien fleet. Her fingers tapped the console as she scrolled through the information, searching for any clue that could help them understand more about the Valkyrie's attack. The damage wasn't random. It wasn't just a military strike. It was more targeted, more methodical. Someone Something had designed this attack specifically to cripple their power systems, engines, and defensive mechanisms. We need to do more than just fix their ships, Tessa said, her voice sharp with determination. She turned to Janice, who was standing beside her, analyzing the data. We need to upgrade their technology, make it more resistant to this kind of attack. If the Valkyrie come for them again, we won't be able to fix them fast enough. Janice nodded. I agree, Captain. The Threxian technology is powerful, but there are vulnerabilities we can exploit to strengthen it. If we integrate some of our own human designs with their systems, we might be able to create something stronger. Tessa smiled. That's exactly what I was thinking. We need a plan, a way to make their ships not just repaired but improved. I don't want to just send them back out there to be destroyed again. It was a bold idea, one that could backfire. But Tessa felt there was no other choice. The Valkyrie were too dangerous, too ruthless. If the Threxians were to survive, and if humanity was to have a place in the galaxy, they needed to be stronger. They needed to evolve, adapt, and build something no one had seen before. In the vast repair bays, the hum of machinery filled the air as teams of engineers from both species worked side by side. Humans and Threxians, once strangers, now shared a common goal. As Tessa walked through the bay, she noticed how the two species interacted. The Threxians were efficient, their movements precise, but there was a sense of wariness in their eyes. They were grateful for the repairs, but Tessa could tell that they weren't entirely comfortable trusting humanity with their technology. We need to ensure they understand the importance of this upgrade, Tessa said to Janice, who was reviewing the designs for the ship's engines. If we're going to merge our technologies, we need the Threxians to work with us. No secrets, no lies. Otherwise, this plan won't work. I'm on it, Captain, Janice replied. I'll handle the integration of the human tech with their systems. But there's something I need to mention. Some of their components are strange, almost like they're holding back. I can't quite figure it out, but it's like they don't want us to see everything. Tessa's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Janice hesitated, clearly unsure whether to say more. Finally, she spoke. It's the power cores. The designs are unlike anything we've seen before. They're more advanced than our best tech, but there are parts that seem incomplete. It's as if they didn't want us to have the full picture. I'm not sure why, but there's something more hidden in those systems. I think if we can crack it, we'll be able to improve their ships even more. Tessa nodded, her gut telling her that this was important. Keep digging, Janice. We need to know everything if we're going to win this war. Meanwhile, the alien fleet's commander, still deeply shaken by the attack and their forced reliance on human technology, met with Tessa in private. The two of them stood before the large viewport in the station's command center, gazing out at the stars. The Threxian leader, whose name was Zalzor, finally spoke. Captain Tessa, Zalzor began, you must understand that we are at a crossroads. The Valkyrie have torn through our fleets, and we are the last of our kind. You've offered us help, but you must know that not all Threxians believe in working with your kind. Many among us feel that your race is too young, too untested. Tessa looked at the alien, meeting its gaze. I understand your hesitation, Zalzor, but you have to trust us. The Valkyrie aren't just a threat to you. They will come after everyone eventually, humans included. If we want to stop them, we have to work together. Zalzor paused, considering her words. Perhaps, but we still do not fully understand your species. We have fought many wars, faced many enemies, but this is unlike anything we have ever seen. If we are to defeat the Valkyrie, we must combine our strengths, and that means trusting each other. Tessa nodded. I agree. The plan I'm proposing is risky, but it's our best chance. We'll integrate our technology with yours, enhance your power systems, and give you the edge you need to survive. Zalzor's eyes narrowed, and for a brief moment, there was a flicker of something, doubt or fear, perhaps, before he spoke again. If we do this, You must promise me one thing, Captain. Promise me that you will not betray us. If we let you in, if we trust you with this technology, you will not use it against us." Tessa met his gaze with unwavering confidence. "You have my word, Zalzor. This isn't just about saving your fleet. It's about saving the galaxy. We're in this together now." The Threxian leader studied her for a long moment, as if weighing her words. Finally, he nodded. "Very well, Captain. We will work with you. But remember, the Valkyrie are not to be underestimated. Even if we combine our strengths, the path ahead will not be easy." As Zalzor left, Tessa stood alone in the command center, staring at the holographic image of the fleet. She knew that the plan to merge their technologies was risky, but it was the only chance they had. The Valkyrie were coming, and the alliance between humans and Threxians was their best hope. But as Tessa looked out at the stars, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story than anyone had revealed. The rivals' threat. The Endeavor hummed with quiet urgency as the engineers worked through the night. The integration of human technology into the Threxian ships was progressing, but the pressure was mounting. Captain Tessa knew they didn't have much time. The Valkyrie were closing in, and every moment they spent fixing the alien fleet brought them one step closer to survival or destruction. It was late in the cycle when the alarm suddenly blared across the station. Tessa's heart skipped a beat as the warning lights flashed in the command center. She quickly stood from her seat, eyes scanning the holographic displays. "Report," she barked, her voice sharp as the crew scrambled to analyze the situation. "Captain, we have incoming ships," Lieutenant Derek said, his voice tense. "They're not from the Threxian fleet. They're unidentified, but they're heavily armed. They're entering the system fast. Too fast." Tessa's pulse quickened. Her mind raced. Not again. Who else could be coming? "Can you identify them?" she asked, moving toward the control panel. "Not yet, ma'am. They're jamming our sensors. It's like they don't want us to track them." Tessa's eyes narrowed as the images of the incoming ships appeared on the screen. They were large, aggressive-looking vessels, heavily armored and bristling with weapons. Their design was unfamiliar, like nothing the humans or the Threxians had ever seen. The ships were slow-moving, but their presence alone was enough to send a wave of unease through the station. "Prepare for battle stations," Tessa ordered. "We don't know who they are, but we're not going to wait to find out. Activate the defensive shields and alert the Threxians." As the crew scrambled to prepare for the worst, Tessa turned to Derek. "I need you to track their movements. If they're coming for us, we need to know why. And fast." On the outside of the station, the mysterious ships loomed closer, their black hulls blending into the darkness of space. The station's sensors continued to struggle with their interference, but there was no mistaking the intent behind the ship's movements. They were preparing to make a strike. Meanwhile, on the station's upper level, Tessa walked briskly to the Threxian command room. She was met by Zalzor, who stood at the large observation window, his glowing eyes focused on the incoming vessels. "They're not the Valkyrie," Zalzor said, his voice calm but filled with an underlying tension. "But they are no less dangerous." Tessa stepped up beside him, her gaze fixed on the ships. "Who are they, then? What do they want?" Zalzor's features tightened, a look of grim recognition on his face. "They are the Rukari, a ruthless mercenary faction. They'd been hired by someone, and I fear they're here for the technology you've helped us integrate. They want the upgrades we're working on. They want what you've given us." Tessa's eyes widened. "The Rukari? Mercenaries?" "Yes. They'd been hired to hunt down any advanced technology they can find. And I fear they've come for the very thing that might turn the tide of this war. The upgrades we're making to our ships. If they take it, the Valkyrie will have the advantage." Tessa clenched her fists. She had thought the threat of the Valkyrie was enough. Now they had to contend with mercenaries, and worse, someone was orchestrating this attack from behind the scenes. The question was, who and why? "We can't let them take our work," Tessa said, her voice filled with determination. "Prepare the ships for a fight. I want the Threxians to focus on defense. We'll hold them off until we can finish the repairs." Zalzur nodded, his eyes glowing brighter in the dim light. "It will not be easy, but we will stand with you, Captain." Back in the control room, the tension in the air was palpable. The crew of the Endeavour worked in overdrive, preparing the station's defenses while the Threxians readied their ships for combat. The Rukari ships loomed ever closer, the dark silhouettes of their hulls growing larger by the second. Tessa took her place at the command station, her mind focused on the immediate task at hand, protecting the station and keeping the repairs on track. As the Rukari ships drew closer, her finger hovered over the weapons console. "Captain," Derek called out, "we've intercepted a transmission from one of the Rukari ships. They're sending a message." "Put it through," Tessa said, her voice calm but filled with urgency. The screen flickered, and the face of a tall, humanoid figure appeared on the screen. Its features were sharp and angular, its dark skin almost blending in with the shadows of its ship. It wore the markings of the Rukari, a notorious mercenary faction known for their brutality and cunning. "Captain Tessa," the figure said, its voice cold and mechanical. "We've come for the technology you've been working on. Stand aside, and no harm will come to you. Resist, and you will regret it." Tessa stood tall, her voice unwavering. "We're not going anywhere. Whatever game you're playing, it ends here. You'll have to go through us." The mercenary's lips twisted into a cruel smile. "So be it." The screen cut out abruptly, and Tessa felt her heart race. She knew what was coming. The Rukari would stop at nothing to get what they wanted, and now they were prepared to fight. "Prepare for incoming fire," Tessa ordered, her mind racing as she looked at the enemy fleet. "We need to buy ourselves some time." All guns, open fire. Outside the station, the battle began. The first volley of energy blasts from the Rukari ships hit the Endeavour's shields, shaking the entire station. The Threxian ships, newly upgraded, returned fire, their weapons glowing brightly as they targeted the incoming mercenaries. Tessa watched the battle unfold, knowing that every second counted. As the Rukari ships closed in, she turned to the engineers in the control room. "Status on the repairs?" she asked. Janice glanced up, her face pale. "We're close, Captain, but we need more time. These ships aren't fully stabilized yet. If we don't finish the upgrades, the Rukari could still overwhelm us." Tessa gritted her teeth. "Then we fight for more time. We don't let them get any closer." Unlikely allies. The Endeavour was under fire. Blasts from the Rukari ships continued to shake the station as its defenses held on by a thread. The once calm corridors of the station had turned into a flurry of activity. Crew members rushed to their posts, Threxian and human engineers working side by side to finish repairs, while others fought to maintain the integrity of the station. Outside, the Threxian ships, with their new upgrades, exchanged fire with the mercenary fleet, a dazzling display of energy beams and explosions in the blackness of space. Captain Tessa stood at the command console, her gaze fixed on the battle unfolding outside the station's observation window. The Rukari were relentless, but the Threxians had a new edge, thanks to the integration of human technology. Yet even with their enhanced weapons and shields, it was clear that the Rukari were not backing down. Tessa knew they needed more than just weapons to win this fight. They needed a strategy. "We can't hold out much longer, Captain," Lieutenant Derek said, his voice filled with urgency. "The Rukari are too powerful, and their numbers keep growing. We need reinforcements, something to turn the tide." Tessa's mind raced. The Threxians, despite their powerful ships, were still overwhelmed. They had to act fast. She turned to Zalzur, who had just entered the command center, his expression grim but determined. "We've fought the Valkyrie for centuries," Zalzur said, his voice deep and calm despite the chaos around them. "But these mercenaries, they're different. They'll keep coming until we have nothing left." Tessa nodded, understanding the desperation in his voice. The Rukari were mercenaries, but they were well organized and well funded. They weren't going to stop just because the Threxian fleet was fighting back. They had to hit back harder. Zalzor paused for a moment, as if considering something. There may be a way to turn the tide, he said slowly, but it will require trusting you, trusting humanity. Tessa raised an eyebrow. Trusting us? What do you mean? Zalzor looked at her, his glowing eyes fixed on hers. You humans are resourceful. We've seen that already. We have something that could shift the balance of power. But it is risky, and you may not like what it means. Tessa felt a sense of unease settle in her stomach. She had heard rumors of powerful weapons, technologies hidden away by the Threxians in case of emergencies. But she wasn't sure if she was ready to wield something that could change the war, and possibly the galaxy. What are you talking about? She asked. Zalzor took a deep breath. We have a weapon, an ancient artifact. It's called the Rogue Star. It's a power source unlike anything you've ever seen. It can wipe out fleets in a single strike, but it is also dangerous. The weapon is unstable, and it requires a direct link to the Threxian command center to activate. Tessa's heart raced. You want to use that? Now. We don't have a choice, Zalzor replied, his voice firm. The Rukari will destroy us if we don't use it. We have to take that risk. But there's a problem. The artifact can only be activated with human technology. It requires the interface your species has developed. Without it, it's useless. And the connection has to be made manually. Tessa's mind whirled. The Rogue Star, a weapon so powerful it could wipe out entire fleets, was their only chance of survival. But it came with immense risks. If it malfunctioned, the damage could destroy the entire station. Yet, without it, they would lose everything. This isn't a decision I can make alone, Tessa said, turning to the crew. She looked around at the engineers, the officers, and the Threxians in the room. Everyone was on edge, unsure of what to do next. Janice, the lead engineer, stepped forward, her face pale but resolute. Captain, I don't know if we can control it. The technology is ancient, and we don't fully understand how it works. But if there's any chance of stopping the Rukari, this might be our only shot. Tessa took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. She knew that activating the Rogue Star was a gamble. But they had no time left. The Rukari were closing in on the station, and their shields were weakening by the second. All right, Tessa said, her voice steady. We'll use it. But we do this together. We can't afford mistakes. The next few hours were a blur of activity. The crew scrambled to interface the Rogue Star with the Threxian ship systems. Janice and the Threxian engineers worked side by side, analyzing the ancient device and trying to make sense of its unpredictable technology. The connection had to be perfect, or else they risked causing a catastrophic explosion. Meanwhile, the Rukari continued their assault. The station's shields flickered under the intense fire, and the Threxian fleet was being pushed back, their ships taking heavy damage. The time for hesitation had passed. Tessa and Zalzor stood at the heart of the command center, watching the preparations unfold. Tessa's hands were sweating, her heart racing, but she knew that there was no turning back now. We're ready, Janice said, stepping forward. Her face was covered in sweat, but her eyes were sharp with determination. We've synced the human tech with the Threxian systems. The Rogue Star is operational, but it's going to take all of us to activate it. We need to make the connection manually. Tessa nodded. Let's do it. With a signal, the crew began the final sequence to power up the weapon. The room was filled with the hum of energy as the artifact came to life. The entire station seemed to shake as the Rogue Star's power surged through the systems. We're locked in, Janice said. Now we just need to align the power output and aim it at the Rukari ships. Tessa stood at the center of the control room, her breath shallow, her fingers gripping the console. The Rukari were almost at their gates. She looked at Zalzor. Are you ready? The Threxian leader nodded, his expression stoic. For the survival of our kind, we must be. With a final command, Tessa activated the rogue star. A pulse of pure energy surged from the station, racing through space. The light from the blast was blinding, and for a moment, everything was silent. Then, the Rukari fleet was obliterated. The blast had been so powerful that the mercenary ships disintegrated before they could even react. The entire fleet gone in an instant. Tessa stood frozen, the magnitude of what had just happened sinking in. The Rukari threat had been eliminated, but at what cost? The rogue star had drained nearly all of the station's power reserves, and it had nearly destroyed the station itself in the process. But it had worked. The Rukari were no more. As the dust settled, Tessa turned to Zalzor, who was silently watching the stars outside. He spoke quietly, as if reflecting on the enormity of their survival. "We've won for now," he said, "but the Valkyrie will not stop. The rogue star is a power no one can ignore. It will change everything." Tessa nodded. She knew that the battle against the Valkyrie was far from over. But for now, humanity and the Threxians had formed an alliance, one that might just be strong enough to survive whatever came next. And as she looked out at the stars, she knew one thing for sure. The war was far from over. But together, they might just stand a chance. The final stand. The victory over the Rukari mercenaries had come at a heavy price. The Endeavor was barely holding together. Its systems strained to the limit after the overwhelming energy burst from the rogue star. But the immediate threat was gone. The Rukari fleet had been annihilated, reduced to nothing but drifting wreckage in the dark void of space. The station had survived, and the Threxian fleet had made it through the battle, albeit heavily damaged. Tessa stood in the command center, the flickering lights casting shadows across her face as the crew worked to stabilize the station's remaining systems. The Threxians, though grateful, were still shaken by the raw power of the rogue star and the cost of its activation. Yet there was no time to rest. As Zalzor had warned, the Valkyrie were coming, and they would not stop until they had claimed everything. "Captain, we have a new problem," Derek called out from the console, his voice urgent. Tessa turned sharply, stepping toward him. "What is it?" "The Valkyrie fleet is incoming," Derek said, eyes glued to the screen. "They're not far off. From the looks of it, they've been tracking us. They know what we did to the Rukari, and they're bringing everything they have." Tessa's stomach sank. She had hoped for more time to regroup, to repair the Endeavor, but the Valkyrie were already on their way. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was the beginning of an all-out war. The entire galaxy could be caught in the crossfire. "How much time do we have?" Tessa asked, keeping her voice steady, even though her heart was pounding. "Less than an hour," Derek replied grimly. "They're closing fast. But there's something else. The Threxian fleet won't be able to stand against them. Even with the upgrades, they're not at full strength." Tessa glanced over at Zalzor, who had been silent up until now. The Threxian leader's glowing eyes looked distant, his face expressionless. "Zalzor, what are your people capable of? Can they hold their ground?" Zalzor shook his head slowly. "Not without the rogue star. Its power is immense, but it's a one-time weapon. We've used it to destroy the Rukari. But it can't be used again. If the Valkyrie come for us, we will not survive another hit like that." Tessa's mind raced. The Valkyrie had the upper hand in terms of raw military power, and she knew that without the rogue star, they would have no way to stop the coming onslaught. They had to find another way to survive. She wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Not while there was still a chance. "We'll have to make our stand here," Tessa said, turning to the crew. "We're not going anywhere. We're going to fight. Together." The room was silent for a moment as the crew processed her words. Then, Janice stepped forward. "Captain, if we can get the Threxians to work with us, we might be able to improvise something. We could combine human strategies with Threxian firepower. If we use the station's defense systems to their full potential, we might be able to force the Valkyrie into a defensive position. Tessa nodded, her mind sharp. Exactly. We won't win this with brute force alone. We need strategy. We need to use our environment. The station itself will be our weapon. Zalzur looked at her, his eyes reflecting a mixture of uncertainty and resolve. You truly believe this will work? Tessa met his gaze. I don't know, but we don't have a choice. The next few hours were spent preparing for the final battle. Every last bit of energy was poured into the station's defensive systems. The Threxian ships, though damaged, took up positions around the station, forming a protective barrier. Engineers and strategists from both sides worked together to fine-tune their weapons, set up traps, and create a network of decoys designed to confuse the Valkyrie fleet. The station itself, though battered, became a fortress in space. Tessa stood in the command center, her eyes scanning the redouts. The Valkyrie were closing in, their ships now visible on the monitors. There was no turning back. The fate of the Endeavor, the Threxians, and humanity hung in the balance. We're ready, Janice said, looking at Tessa from across the room. Everything's set. We just need to make sure we don't waste any of our shots. Tessa took a deep breath. Let's make every shot count. The Valkyrie fleet entered the system, a massive armada of warships bristling with weapons. Their arrival was like the darkening of the skies, an overwhelming force, ready to crush anything in its path. The Endeavor and its allies were outnumbered, but Tessa refused to back down. The first wave of Valkyrie ships launched their assault, targeting the station's outer defenses. Explosions rocked the Endeavor as shields flickered and strained under the onslaught. But the station held strong. Now, Tessa shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. The station's weapon systems fired in unison, a barrage of laser fire and energy blasts rocketing out into the void. The Threxian ships joined in, their weapons lighting up the dark expanse as they fought back with everything they had. The Valkyrie responded with fury, returning fire with devastating precision. But the Endeavor wasn't just standing still. It was a moving fortress, shifting positions, launching surprise attacks, and using every trick in the book to stay one step ahead. Tessa's heart raced as the battle unfolded before her eyes. For every Valkyrie ship that was destroyed, two more took its place. The station's defenses were starting to show signs of wear, but they held fast. The Threxian fleet, though outmatched, fought valiantly beside humanity's forces. Together, they made a stand like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Hours passed, and the battle seemed endless. The station groaned under the pressure, its systems failing one after another. But Tessa didn't give up. Neither did the Threxians. Despite their overwhelming enemy, they held the line. Then, in a moment of clarity, the tide began to turn. One by one, the Valkyrie ships started to fall. The coordinated efforts of humans and Threxians had worked. The Valkyrie fleet, despite its overwhelming numbers, couldn't keep up with the relentless strategy and firepower of the combined forces. The enemy began to retreat, pulling back from the station in an attempt to regroup. But it was too late. The battle was won. As the last of the Valkyrie ships fled into the void, Tessa exhaled a long, relieved breath. The Endeavor was battered, its systems nearly exhausted, but it had survived. The Threxians had fought alongside humanity, and together they had held off the most powerful force the galaxy had ever seen. Zalzur entered the command center, his eyes filled with respect. Captain Tessa, you have done what no one thought possible. You have saved us. Tessa nodded, still catching her breath. We saved each other, Zalzur. And together, we'll keep fighting. This war isn't over, but today, we've proven that the galaxy has hope. Zalzur's eyes gleamed with something that hadn't been there before. Trust. Yes. Together, we stand. Tessa looked out at the stars. The war was far from over. But for the first time, She truly believed humanity had a place in this galaxy, and together with the Threxians, they might just have a chance to win it. And so the Endeavor floated in space, battered but unbroken, as the galaxy turned its gaze toward an uncertain future, one where the strength of unlikely allies could change the fate of all.